a child needs a certain number of things that are critical, particularly in this negative second year when every child goes through refusals and so forth. And if you look at what a child eats over a period, they pretty much cover themselves with all sorts of refusals. But if a mother, for instance, and father have in their minds that there are just 4 things that a child needs per 24 hours, then I don't think they get so uptight about it, because the second they get uptight, so does the child. A pint of milk or its equivalent, 2 ounces of protein with iron in it, a little bit of fruit juice or fruit, and a multivitamin, and that covers. It's almost impossible to miss it unless you're working awful hard at it. First of all, don't have very high expectations and realize that it's a child's way of making their own choices, of understanding themselves, of using a new motor. And so it's all sorts of things. And so I would say to a parent, just take it easy. Sit back and let your stomach churn. And I used to sing because I couldn't stand my children's playing with their food, all these things that they had to do. And so I'd sit there and sing to try to keep myself under control. So I think there are ways of handling your own anxiety and tension, and I would say look for them as a parent. When the child is little, the first 3 years, a parent really has control over how much playing out or teasing or provoking or dropping food over. At the point where they start dropping food over the side of their high chair, it's time to quit the meal. Forget it. Wait till the next meal. The trouble is you don't wait till the next meal. You let them graze. That's no good. If you're really trying to put over that this is where it stops, then it's got to stop there. By 4 and 5, I think you can begin to expect children to take some responsibility for manners, for what other people do at the table, and so forth. And I notice in cross-cultural work that by 4 and 5, a child is expected to be adult in the way they eat, in the way they store food, the way they handle it, and so forth. In a culture like, say, Guatemala, or I saw this in Africa too, by 2 years of age, they turn it over to children to do their own feeding. And in a big family, that a 2-year-old doesn't get much food. The other children eat it all up. And so I wondered why parents didn't step in and help them and be sure they got what they needed. When I asked in these cultures, they would say, he has to learn to get it himself. And so they already have gold in their mind that I never would have thought of. I think it's very hard for parents to put limits on feeding, like ending a meal at the time when the child begins to play with food, because they do have this feeling, oh, I've got to get food down his throat or he'll expire. And they miss the point of what it's all about, that this playing with food is really to get the parents uptight. And so I'd say at a point where parents begin to feel this tension about, I've got to get food in and it's not working, they ought to pull back and say, what's this all about? Is this about food or is it about our interaction? So it's not a simple thing to answer, and I think parents have to figure it out for themselves as they go. But this is why I think it's so critical for them to keep in their mind how little covers a child's needs. Dr. Spock reports on a study he did in, I think it was in Maryland, Baltimore, somewhere, in which he watched to see if a child didn't cover himself over time, and found that he did. That over a month you could pretty much predict that a child will eat all of the things that he needs, in a way that fosters his growth and so forth. When this isn't happening, I begin to wonder if there's tension in the family, or if something's going on between the child and the parents that's interfering with this sort of instinctive desire to explore, to look at what they're, what's out there, what can I eat, and so forth. And so, to me, it's a signal to look beyond just the feeding. The thing that we've lost in this present pediatrics that's tragic is making really meaningful relationships between patients and pediatricians, parents and pediatricians, in which they really trust each other and can expose questions and anxieties that they just don't or won't with somebody with whom they have a poor relationship. So I think when things are failing between a parent and a child, maybe it's partly the pediatrician's fault. And our pediatrics today is really not serving its purpose in terms of preventing disorders. We love to treat things after they occur, but we aren't very good at preventing them. And so I would like to see pediatric teaching take this into account. In our pediatric training, we get very little exposure to relationships, to how to make relationships, how to use them, how to trust parents as the experts on their own children. They are, and we're not. How to look for positives rather than negatives, and how to use the child's temperament and development as our language with parents. These would be the things that I think could make a significant difference. They're the sort of background of our touch points training. And people who really buy into these concepts and really begin to practice with them, not only begin to change and have a better time with their patients, but they begin to have a great time. It's sort of the fun of pediatrics. And I think they undoubtedly, well, I don't have any question, but that they prevent a lot of problems that would occur otherwise. So everybody blames time. We don't have enough time, or we already do that. And those are defenses, as far as I can see, because we don't do that. We don't look for the good things about people, we look for the failures. And we don't really give credit to parents as being the experts. And we don't really know a lot about child development. So these would be things I'd love to see happen.